Nice.
Now, this is actually going to be the part where we talk about union activism. From what I know, you all have been very integral in union activism in your designated areas. With you, Leah, it was with Starbucks, if I'm correct, as well as Courtney and Keisha. You guys were very integral in the union activism of Chateau Marmont.
Hmm.
That was in California. So, Leah, I think this is my first time seeing you and meeting you. So, welcome. If you can introduce yourself and also talk about the activism that you advocate, that you champion for with Starbucks.
Hi, so my name is Leah. And yeah, I worked at Starbucks for a little while and now I'm part of the union movement. So I know everyone knows Starbucks is pretty public right now with our efforts in fighting for unionization. I actually I got started on the train about a year now ago almost. It's coming up on a year soon. And it was just me and two other partners at my store. We kind of were coming together and doing meetings, and we reached out to Workers United to kind of help us in the efforts of like organizing. And then we were very hush hush at the beginning of it because we didn't want our management to know,
Got it.
obviously. And then we went public around April, I want to say. And we voted and we won our election. So we are actually a certified union store.
Congratulations! This is
Thank
so
you.
good to hear. Yeah, yeah. Whenever unionization happens, we're like this. So that's how we feel about unions. And so it's so good to have you. And I can see the smiles on Keisha and Courtney's face because they're like, "Yay!" for you too. So this is what I love. It's all love here. So Courtney and Keisha, uh, you guys are no strangers to RBN. It's so good to see my sisters here with your bright, smiling faces once again. And if you guys can give us from your perspective as union activists, what was going on with Chateau Marmont and the victories that you guys have also obtained this year.
Okay, so what happened with Chateau Marmont was it was kind of an interesting situation because it was during the pandemic. Well, it was actually right before the pandemic that some of the workers had like even reached out to reached out to the local union to try to start to unionize. And then during the pandemic, we all got laid off. No matter how long you'd been there or didn't how much money you were making, didn't matter. Everybody got laid off. And he actually, Andre's the owner, and he actually did get PPP loans, so he was technically supposed to keep us. And there was a lot of funny business going on that we found out later as we started working on the labor union.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was about a 2-year process, and we only just like maybe a month and a half ago, 2 months ago, got our union approved and we all got emails from Chateau Vermont saying like, okay, fine, we're gonna do this labor union thing. They were pissed, but
Wow.
Yeah, it was a really interesting experience because it was Unite Here Local 11 helped us unionize, and
Mhm.
we didn't know that like we were the lowest paid of all of the hotels. Like for me, I worked in the restaurant industry for a really long time. So when we went to Chateau Marmont, you could get like they would give you like a meal for work, and there was a dry cleaners there, so you would just drop your clothes off. And I was like, wow, this is great, but like they were stealing our tips. Like we didn't know that. Um, and there were other things where the thing that I learned was like, the people who were trying to unionize, it's because they had worked there for so long. And so they just knocked on our door and already had this effort going. So like we joined an effort that was already there. So we were like from the event staff. And there are a lot of different departments, and it really took all of the different departments coming together to get it over the finish line.
Wow. Okay. So, yeah, and I think I was talking to you both about what was going on in regards to Chateau Marmont, and I reported on it too because it was a great victory, that you guys shared as well. Uh, so going back to Leah for a second, is regards to the Starbucks action. What was one of the biggest challenges that you had? Of course, we all know that there are challenges with starting union and doing union
Active.
almost said Activision. It's still morning. But as far as the union activities that you were involved in, what was some of the biggest challenges that you had? Because Starbucks is a very big multinational corporation.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I think personally for me, but actually not really just personally me, but other partners
Hmm.
as well, felt that the retaliation and the union busting was probably one of the hardest parts.
Hmm.
For organizing. And honestly, there is definitely a disproportional rate of people being targeted that are Black, POC, and LGBTQ in
Yes.
the Starbucks stores. The amount of us that have been fired, me included, because of our organizing efforts is kind of
Wow.
really sad. The reason I even organized and wanted to organize in the first place was because of the discrimination and racism that I saw other partners facing in my
Hmm.
store at the hands of not only customers but management. So I grew up in a really conservative town, and so I do tend to see a lot of that here daily, and I grew up with it and I'm used to it. But when I had to work with it and smile and make their drink and
Mm,
go on a happy day, it was hard.
I bet.
And yeah, the first time I really noticed like that I was being treated differently was probably when I was wearing the same pants as a coworker of mine. Like literally, we both got them from Costco. We were talking about them, and like, oh, you have those pants on. Oh, I have those pants on. And it was like a cute moment. I got told to take them off or that I couldn't wear them anymore because they looked inappropriate on me compared to my white coworker. Yeah, that was the first time. And then it goes on to so many different instances. From I had a manager, a white staff manager, tell me that he noticed I was being treated differently. And this is a white male. And so when he says it's because of the color of your skin, it's the color of your skin. Like it wasn't blinding to me at all once he told me that.
Yeah.
And when I brought it up to my manager, my store manager, she basically told me to give the girl the benefit of the doubt. Starbucks policy is to give partners the benefit of the doubt. Cut her some slack. She's going through some stuff. Um, but I didn't get cut slack and I didn't get the benefit of the doubt. And I was going through stuff and I'm still going through stuff personally in my own life, but I was still treated unfairly and I treated her with kindness. There was other instances too where customers were coming into our store and screaming the hard R. Um, yeah, but still being served and able to sit in our cafe. And when I approached my manager about it, her response to me was, well, we want them to be customers. We just don't want them to be racist to your face. Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy. So when we finally came out and, we went public with our union and it was outed that I was a pro advocate for the union,
Yeah.
I was
Yeah.
targeted. I was looked over for promotion. I was defamed and villainized by my manager to my partners. And, I was unjustly fired in the end. And it's hard. But honestly, I still feel that the solution to all this is unionization.
Uh, wow. Wow.
They,
Uh,
they wouldn't fight against you so hard if the answer wasn't unionization, right? I mean, wow, that's awful.
Exactly.
Oof.
yeah. Courtney, Keisha, do you two want to add something? Because
I mean, it makes me think of a lot of different things that we didn't have so many of the same issues of retaliation because it was already COVID and the pandemic. So,
Right.
Everybody was fired and at home. The bigger struggles that we had were trying to convince people on our own events team to join the effort and at least sign up or talk to some of the union organizers. Hey, Sabby.
Yeah. Hey, Sabby.
Hello.
Hey. And it was hard in that way because for us, we were on the events team. And so we were there the least. I feel like we had the least amount of investment. There were some people who would work there forever and, they would only get to be a food passer. And
Right.
we would never let the black food servers move up to actually be waiters so they could make tips. They were only food passers. And
Food runners, yeah.
food runners. And I always thought that this one guy was just, he had a great attitude and he never got
He knew everything.
Yeah. Yeah, but so we learned a lot more about the discrimination that other sectors were going through, and all the way up from, people who were bellhops for 30, 40 years, doing all of these. They did like a magazine, an article about
Yeah.
bellhops at Chateau Marmont and how integral they are to the history and all of this stuff. And come to find out, they didn't have health care. They were
Right. And
making less than we were. And
they were making
longer.
It was insane.
Wow.
Yeah. The amount of money that they were making. And that made it really hard to unionize too, because, when we all kind of first started getting together and started meeting with Local 11 to even get started on convincing people about the union, we kind of had to, we didn't have to, but we just ended up all kind of going around and saying how much money we made. And when we said how much money we made as the events team, which was like $25 an hour or something, the housekeepers, the valets, like the cooks, everyone was shocked. They were like, what are you guys even doing here? You guys are making good money. This is crazy. And we were like, wait, first of all, the fact that you guys aren't making better money and you've been there for 20 years is insane. But then second of all, as Court was saying, like, even as event servers, we were making the least amount of money, like on the Sunset Strip. So it was, that was a really hard thing to kind of like, just like work with other people and get past, like, even though, it's like, I'm sorry that I'm making more money than you, but that almost made us want to, for me, that made us want to fight a lot harder because then we could really see how much, how much people were being mistreated. And, it's people that you just pass by, especially in a hotel like that. You're not seeing people all the time. You're not working the same shifts. Like, you're kind of just seeing each other in passing. So it takes a lot of trust to build that, because you have to just believe what the other person is saying about their work experience. Because for us, it was actually, not so terrible, but for other people, it was terrible. And we had to kind of fight on their behalf.
I got you. Thank you so very much. I'd like to introduce the hostess with the mostest, my homie, Savvy Sabs. The original host is here. I will be bowing out, but I will be doing the producing in the background, so I'll be staying along with you ladies for the ride. But I was just here as a sub. The real host is here. Savvy, is so good to see you. Good morning. That's time for me to exit stage left.
Bye, JB.
See you later.
Bye, JB. Thanks so much. All right, I am here. It's been an interesting morning, but thank you guys so much for joining in. One of the questions I do want to ask in reference to unionizing efforts, I think we need to talk about HR. And I say this because when you start working at a company, and I've worked in the food and service industry as well, I think all of us have been there. But regardless of the job, when you start working with a company, they tell you basically that HR is your friend, that HR is there to help the employees. And from what I found, and I think you guys have probably found this as well, that is not necessarily the case. And I think it's important for people to understand that HR is there to protect the company, not so much the employees. So I'm curious, something I wanted to ask you guys, at any point, did any of you think about going to HR, or did you contact HR, and how did that go? We'll just go with you, start with you, Leah.
So Starbucks actually doesn't have a HR department. What we do have is called partner relations. So it's a number that you would call. It's not like someone that's sitting in an office in your building and you go to. It's a number you would call to put in like, complaints or issues, and then they would do like internal investigations, and they would get back to you with like a solution. But like I said before, because Starbucks has this give the benefit of the doubt to your partners, that's actually why they didn't establish a true HR, because it's kind of like a system where if you or me as a partner had a shift lead or someone that was a manager above me and I had an issue with them, Starbucks would like that I address them personally and talk to them about it and not have a middleman to mediate. Or if I have an issue with like my store manager, same thing. I'm supposed to take the responsibility and, going to her and letting her know, or him or her, letting them know that I have an issue and that I would like to address it. So in my efforts with my store, no, I never actually went to an HR department for anything union focused. I have called partner relations before, and I actually called them when I was being mistreated by one of my shift leaders. I actually didn't go through with the full call because after talking with my store manager, she kind of talked me down and tone policed me to a point where I didn't really feel comfortable talking with partner relations anymore, because I just kind of knew at that point nothing was going to get done.
Courtney and Keisha.
Yeah, Chateau. No, they didn't have an HR department. Well, maybe they
there was
did.
that
I mean, I guess
girl.
it was like payroll though, but you know.
She like, we signed papers with her, but
Right.
there was an issue. I mean, the issue is that we didn't even know that we didn't know that tips that were owed to us weren't coming to us. So we
Right.
didn't even know that there was a problem. We did try to talk to our managers about certain things like sexism. Keach and I lived really close. We were like, hey, we'll come pick up some shifts. We'll help move furniture. And always it would only be given to the men. And it's like, we all had to be hired based on kind of the same, I can lift wicker furniture too.
Or like do an extra shift of just like, washing glassware after a party or something. Like that's an easy shift. You're pretty much just standing around and then you have to lift, a couple of racks up and down to a flight of stairs. But
people would get overtime and
yes, exactly. And the guys would always get overtime because they would be asked to move the furniture and stuff. So, I mean, we certainly brought it up. It was absolutely never addressed. And if anything, totally dismissed, like, oh, that's definitely not happening.
I think most of us tried to stay out of the way of management. Like there was one woman who was like very terrifying. I think I just tried. We had a good direct managers, like we had good relationships with them. But I think like a big issue with Chateau was that the big vibe was like, sweep it under the rug, kick the can down the road. Like an experience that I had was, working at a place that's very Hollywood focused. Sometimes the clients who were throwing parties would want the servers to wear specific things. And one party, they wanted us to do our hair a specific way. And it's like, I am Black. I have curly hair. If you want me to wear my hair in a low bun or something, you have to tell me that before. I'm coming in. And then they had women there to do our hair and my hair looked ridiculous. And you have to understand, I'm an actress. I'm there like, you don't know who you're going to see. I feel like I look terrible. I feel singled out because nobody knows how to deal with my hair. Like it was so degrading to me in a way. I was like, why not have just warned me or told me or something? And I directly told that to my manager, but I don't think that anything was going to change with that. I actually talked to Aisha Tyler later in the bathroom that night because I was so upset. I was like, why would they do this to me? And she was like, they do this to all of us, quite honestly. But yeah, like just a real disregard for different genders, different races. And there was nothing was ever really just addressed. It was just kind of like, well, I guess, sorry that happened. Like,
and that was it. Yeah.
Yeah, I know I've interviewed a couple of Starbucks unionizers, and one of them that I interviewed told me that in his particular store, the problem was the manager. And so he said that, going to the manager didn't really do anything. And that was the location here in Boston. And they did just recently win, but they were on strike for like over a month. Because it's hard when the problem is the person who supervises you. Because then it's like, management looks out for management, and you got to be careful if you have criticisms of your manager, even if they're in the wrong. One of the questions I have too, in reference to trying to unionize, because this is a question that comes up. How did you start? Like what was the first step that you took? How did you get the employees together, and how did it go from there? And I'll go to you, Leah.
That's actually a great question. So for me, the first time that I talked about union was with a coworker over the phone during Christmas, or a little bit after or before Christmas. I was out sick, so we were talking on the phone about some stuff that was going on at work, and I was like, we should unionize. And that coworker was kind of like, I'm not positive. Like, I don't really know much about it. I think for now I'm like a little too worried. Let's not. So I dropped the topic and like never really went through with it later, until much later when I was addressed by another coworker and that same coworker that I talked to on the phone. And they're like, let's unionize. And I was like, oh, okay, yeah, like let's do it. And then from there, our one coworker, he already had a contact with Workers United that he had been like talking to back and forth about this. So she wanted to meet with us all in like a Zoom chat. And with everything with COVID and the pandemic, I think Zoom made it a lot easier. It definitely gave us the power to kind of meet at any time we wanted with how big or how small of a group we wanted. And unfortunately, our OC kind of group was quite small in the beginning. We created a group chat and like in Messenger and then in GroupMe and like put all the partners that we knew that were pro union in it. And then that was kind of how we pushed cards and got signatures. And it was because we were so hush hush, you know, we had to be very quiet on the floor when talking about it. So it made it a little hard in gathering people up. But for the most part, everyone in my store was kind of fueled by just their anger for how they were treated and how they were paid and things like that. So most people were pro union. We do have a little bit of an anti union kind of group in my store, but it's all management. And yeah, it's all my shift leads and then my manager. So it's nothing, but most of the partners do tend to be pro union. A lot of them are really young too. They're like high school or college, so like myself. And so, you know, that was kind of hard too, managing school schedule with work schedule and then when can people meet. So most of the time it was just me and my two other coworkers and then this staff member from Workers United, and they were just giving us input on how to organize, and then we kind of just were doing the rest.
All right, Courtney and Keisha.
Oof, ours was a struggle. It was really easy to get people. The older people, they were much easier to get a hold of, and they're much easier to talk to, and they kind of knew what unions were, and they were ready. The people that were kind of in the mid range or like early 20s, forget it. They could not care less. It was very hard to get them organized. It was very hard to get them to have empathy for other people and care about other people, and like maybe this job is okay for you because you're just using this as a part-time job, but Carlos over here is trying to raise 3 kids, and we had crazy stories like workman's comp things that weren't paid off, like a guy like cut his hand and never could get paid back for the stitches. And there were things that were like really affecting people, and it was we organized over even though it was over COVID, we tried to do in-person meetings. So a union rep would come with us, or sometimes 2, and we would like set up the meetings, just over Instagram or whatever, like just DM people and try to be like, okay, hey, let's meet on Thursday for like an hour. A lot of times the meetings would go really long, longer than an hour, but getting that first initial meeting was really difficult. And then just getting people to even just empathize was hard. So we did have some stuff over Zoom, but that was more kind of planning stuff, just like coming up with a game plan. The actual work of like talking to people about the union and explaining it was a lot of just like, setting up meetups all around town.
I also think because there was already an established union that was helping us, they also did things like food drives. So we were able to volunteer over at the food banks and stuff and hand out food with them. So it was like nice to meet other people that were in the union and see other efforts, and they would talk about other efforts they had going on, and also see like all the workers coming through that we were helping. And then, some of our people that we were trying to convince would come through. So that was also like a good, community building thing. That was fun to participate in.
Awesome. So Keisha brought up a good point here about older employees who are used to unions and really know what it's about versus some of the younger employees. And Leah, I want to ask you, because I do realize a lot of people that work at Starbucks tend to be on the younger side. I worked at Starbucks. I make it sound like I did time. I worked at Starbucks for a little bit when I was in college, and all of us were in school, all of us that worked there. And I'm curious, did you face any type of struggles from like those that worked at Starbucks that were students? Because for them, it was just like Courtney was saying, it was just a part-time job.
No, yeah, definitely. I think for my store, but also kind of in the region, we've definitely noticed that there is sort of a struggle with certain stores because a lot of the partners do tend to be, like I said, younger. You're seeing a lot of high schoolers that are like juniors and seniors, and then like early college or sometimes even late college. And then there's just a sprinkle of the ones that are like a little after or have kids or like married and stuff like that. I do think that it honestly just comes down to education. I really believe that. I learned about unions in high school, my junior year. I had a great history teacher. I love him so much. Mr. Andrews, he was amazing. And I had him like 3 different history classes, AP, contemporary issues, and then just like regular history. And he was just awesome. I loved him. And he really talked about unions a lot. And I think a lot of people don't realize like unions are the reason why we have 40-hour work weeks and paid vacation and FMLA. Like those are the structures that are in your, everyday employment that came from unions from before. And when I had those conversations with like the students, they were kind of like similar to what Keisha said. Oh, I'm only working here part time. Like it really doesn't affect me. It was hard to grab empathy from them. I totally agree with that. But I think also the ones that are the ones of that are starting the union right now, the ones that are rallying now, we are all kind of young. And I do think that not all of us understand, but most of us really do. And I do believe that it starts with a younger generation into making move and changes and shifts now. And my generation and the generation below me, we're kind of the ones that I think really have to make a difference and educate ourselves so that we can put ourselves in positions in the future to make a difference, like how Starbucks is doing now and how we are all doing now. The partners that have come together that I met, we're all around the same age, 23, 25, like 20s. But most of us do have a really good, clear understanding of what a union is. The ones that are pretty anti-union are on the cusp of like not, they're just like kind of, I don't care. It's honestly just education. They have no idea.
Well, I definitely applaud your teacher for educating you guys about unions in school because I was surprised to hear that. I was like, what? So that's awesome. But I have a question in reference to the next step, which for me would be worker co-ops, right? So what I always tell people is that union for me is like the first step, but the ultimate goal I think that a lot of us should have are worker cooperatives. And I say this because with the worker co-op, you actually own a piece of the company. And I wanted to get your opinion. I'm going to start with Courtney and Keisha about this. Do you think that that's where a lot of the people that are unionizing right now, do you think that that's where essentially we may be headed, and why or why not?
Well, I mean, that's another education issue. I mean, I love the idea of co-ops, but honestly, I never really thought about it very much until maybe the last General Strike Summit. Like, I don't remember hearing a lot about it until like maybe a year ago or a year and a half ago or so. I didn't even know that was possible, but I mean, sure, it's a great idea. I think it's going to take a lot of education though to get people to understand that there's a way around capitalism kind of. That's, I don't know, Savvy Court, what do you think? I think that's bold, but we could try it.
Girl, I let you take that question.
Come on, Court.
Because I agree. I mean, yeah, I think it's education, and I think that now, I mean, would there be like a more long-term commitment to the company and that sort of relationship, right? I think that
Yep.
now, I mean, I think people long for that kind of stability, but also I think people are scared of that because now we've been trained to live in such a gig economy, and there's so much trauma, and PTSD with all of these jobs. It would be a big trust. But I think, yeah, like people would want that kind of stability. It would, yeah, I think if we could get more companies that we'd have to restructure a lot of things, I think, for people to trust the process. But I think it's good to like get that topic, starting to marinate in people's minds.
Yeah, I didn't, Richard Wolf was the one that educated me about worker co-ops. And now I go to him all the time. Like I go to Economic Update all the time to learn more and more about worker co-ops. And then also Roger Meadows, who I do see is also in the chat, where the workers can have some type of ownership. Lee, I want to get your take on this as well.
I know very little about it, but I know Starbucks kind of does have that. So we do have like a bean policy where when you get started, you kind of own a share, and they call it like a bean share. I think they do it kind of similar to what Courtney said, it's for the longevity of like wanting people to last in the company, because the longer you are, the more you can invest in your share and the more it grows and you have like a part in it. That's actually why they call us partners and not coworkers or employees. We're called partners because we have a share in the company. That's their kind of mentality about it. I do think it does slightly work. I know Costco, you know, there's a lot of Costco's that are unionized, and I know from personal experience, like they also do have like get a portion of the company too when you work there, and the longer you work there, that grows and you can invest into it too. Most Costco workers that I know seem pretty happy, at least prior to the pandemic. I don't know about after. But you know, I do think I don't know if it's vital. I think it's like necessary. I would just like to be more educated on it, I think.
I want to show a clip here. I'm not sure if everyone is familiar, but the railroad workers and the truckers, the Cisco truckers. Sorry, this is playing on its own. I don't know why that's happening. Okay, the railroad workers and the Cisco truckers have not been able to reach negotiations. For those who are not aware, Cisco, this is the company that if you worked in the restaurant industry, you probably saw this box at some point or another. This is the company that delivers a lot of food and food products to restaurants and to nursing homes across the United States. But you have to have those truckers, right? So they haven't reached negotiations. In fact, police, Boston PD just arrested some of them that were striking. Then we have the railroad workers as well, still have not reached an agreement. So they still could go on strike. So I want to play this clip here because I want to show people why they were threatening to strike in the first place and what this could mean in reference to the supply chain in the United States. So let me just mute myself so I don't get an echo here.
Of the railroad strike are happening once again, and if this were to happen, this would be something that would affect consumers across the country. There's not a strike yet, but there is a potential for a strike. So there are a total of 12 railroad unions that are working together. They represent about 115,000 employees, and they are in various stages of negotiations right now, pushing for better working conditions. All these unions are in various negotiating stages, and if these two sides between the unions and the railroads don't come to agreements, the unions are saying that workers are ready to strike. This is all happening after more than 3 years of failed contract negotiations among unions and the railroads. So the unions are pushing for a pay increase and better working conditions, and say workers have been unable to take time off for medical visits and family emergencies without fear of punishment. So that's one of the things that they're really pushing with these negotiations. The U.S. economy has gone through a lot over the past few years with the COVID-19 pandemic, and the threat of this strike would just add more stress by shutting down 30% of the country's freight. We saw the president and CEO of the U.S. Chamber of Commerce say that this sort of national rail strike would be an economic disaster, where she pointed to this would be something that would freeze the flow of goods, empty shelves, shutter workplaces, and raise prices for families and businesses across the country.
So I want to get your take on this, because if they do decide to strike, the railroad workers and the Cisco, Cisco's truckers are striking, but if they don't reach negotiations, you have the truckers and you have the railroad workers. These are two industries that do affect the supply chain in the United States. And so one of the things that I've said is that if those two were to partner up, this is our way to a general strike in this country, because you have to affect the supply chain in order to have an effective general strike. So, and I'll explain that to people who are not familiar. People, striking at their local employers, that's great. But when we talk about a general strike, so we had the summit last year, Courtney and Keisha were a part of that. You really have to find a way to affect the supply chain. And I want to get you guys' opinion about general strike. Do you think that this could be the pathway forward if they were to link up? And do you think it would be effective? We'll go to Leah.
Yeah, I do think sometimes you have to really shake the ground to make, earthquakes and make change. Earthquakes, they create mountains and rivers and valleys. And so in order to make a difference, you kind of have to shake the world a little bit. It will be tough, and I think a lot of people will be mad, obviously, but people who understand what they're going through, us, middle class workers or lower class workers, we kind of understand the struggle. I think we'll have empathy for them for the most part. And I think we all just want to see them, get better working conditions. I don't understand why that's so hard. I really don't. If you care about your people so much and you care about this country so much, then why not give us what we need to get through our day and get through our work day and be happy in life. So yeah, I think it's definitely a good team up. And I'm excited to see what it'll bring and what impact it'll do.
Courtney and Keisha?
I certainly hope that they do it, honestly. I mean, it's just, I don't know how else we can get any push for any progress in this country for workers. I really don't. I mean, we seem to be at the bottom of the priority list for everything that's happening right now. And I think, we have plenty of politicians who are saying, politicians and wealthy people who are saying, oh, I'll pay $15 a gallon of gas for, giving billions of dollars to Ukraine. But for some reason, when the workers of America ask for health care or ask for a raise, when they know that the minimum wage hasn't been raised since like 2008 or 9, I mean, they always look at us like we're looking for a handout. And I just don't know how else you could ever shake these people up unless you just piss them off and just halt the economy. I don't know how else you could do it. And they would really, really help. And I like what Leroy said too, like just more of this cross, working together of different kind of industries. It really would shake everything up.
Yeah, I mean, I think we really have to be strategic. I think that's kind of like what we've been talking about more, since the last summit, is how we can be strategic. And, not everyone's in a labor union, not everyone's even, has the opportunity. So the more we could do this kind of cross-pollinating and, like have like a buddy system or something, and like these two unions are going to strike at the same time, and then these two unions are going to strike, and kind of attack them that way. I think we could get enough people involved to make an impact, but not so many people that we'd have to do like, a 3-day general strike where everybody in the entire country, stays home from work. That might be more difficult to coordinate. But if we can use kind of existing systems and pair them together, I think it could be really effective.
Yeah, I was thinking about something recently because Chipotle has been having a difficult time. Their employees have been trying to strike. One of the Chipotle locations in Maine decided to close to prevent those employees from striking, just close the whole location. It's crazy. But I'm curious, like, would you have been interested in doing that type of partnership? So, for example, Leah, if there were employees at like your local Chipotle who were thinking about going on strike, do you think some of the Starbucks employees would have been interested in saying, you know what, let's do this strike together to have even a larger impact? Do you think people would have been interested in doing that and combining their efforts?
Yeah, I think it's definitely something that if it came down in my area or my region and we had enough stores that were close enough to Chipotle, they would definitely do it at the same time. I don't see that being an issue at all. Helping each other make change is honestly the way to go. I know when my store, won our union, the teachers union came from down the street and they supported us and they cheered us on. And ever since then, they've always advocated for if we ever do a strike or anything like that, like they're going to come, they're going to cheer us on, they're going to be there. So I don't know. I don't see why we wouldn't do the same thing, especially in my town. That would be funny because my store manager husband is the store manager of Chipotle. So It would be hilarious if both our stores went on strike. They would be double mad and it would hit home very close.
JP seems silly. I didn't know that. For those people watching, I did not know that. Courtney and Keisha, would you have been interested, or you think the employees at Chateau would have been interested in partnering up with, let's say, another local hotel employees wanting to try to unionize as well?
I mean, I'm not sure if it would have really hit people as much if the PPP loan kind of situation wouldn't have happened. I'm not sure. What do you think, Keith?
I mean, we kind of similar to Leah. We did have a couple, like the strippers union came by, and some workers from other hotels came by. We did have that. But I think maybe what could have been more impactful, I guess, would be if we had a, like Starbucks and Chipotle. So that's like, drinks and food, So maybe for Chateau, we would need like, hotel workers and, maybe the
Uber
Cisco
drivers,
trucks or,
Uber drivers or something.
Yeah, like maybe, you know what I mean? Maybe
Mhm.
two more disparate things to shut down, like, I mean, for us, we try, they tried to shut down like entire parties. Jay-Z and Beyonce had their party
Yep.
there, and as they always do. But that could have been something where, yeah, like if like the Uber drivers would have, been on strike and then people couldn't get to their little party, then maybe that would have been a little bit more.
Well, they're not
impactful.
taking Ubers too.
Well, okay, yeah, I guess they're not. Okay, so I guess drivers.
Maybe drivers generally. But one thing I was thinking when Leah was talking is like, what about some of these stores that don't have enough workers almost to like advocate for themselves? Because now, we live in Virginia and there's a lot of Dollar Trees, dollar stores, Dollar Generals, and they purposely make it one person working at a time, and one or two people, and they just keep it bare bones. And I wonder, like that might be something that we need to start doing, is like striking on behalf of, in a way, like helping people organize, because literally they work them that way so they can't advocate for themselves. Like I know there was one girl that worked at Big Lots, and she was trying to get something going with the union, but it was really hard for her to get her coworkers on board. And I'm not sure if she's still trying, but I don't know, like if you have this kind of information and you know how to do these things, or you have the skills to help organize, it might be worth it to strike up some conversations with some people in your town at these kind of places, because how do you have time to advocate for yourself?
Right, yeah.
Right.
And maybe it's not
Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say maybe it's not always about like such a rigid definition of what a union is. Like maybe we need to expand that. Like maybe it's just the fact that we're all in a verbal agreement together that we're going to do this is maybe enough, or maybe enough that someone at least could come to a meeting with you if you have to talk to your manager. Like doesn't necessarily have to be a union person, maybe it can just be just like a group of people that just we just work together, and we're not an official union, because they're like Court's saying, like, yeah, if there's just one person working at a Dollar Tree, that's hard to do.
That's right. And that leads me to this next question. And Matthew actually grabbed it before me. What about mom and pop stores? And that's the direction I was heading into, because I was thinking about, what about people in the food and service industries that don't work for a chain? Like, let's say they work at a local, Italian restaurant or local cafe. And a lot of times those people also feel like they can't really advocate for themselves, right? Because it's a mom and pop shop. Like they may feel guilty if they want to unionize or try to unionize at a mom and pop shop, because they realize, oh, they have limited resources, so I don't know if I should do that. But at the same time, like you have people, and I've seen this, and you guys got to tell me, you're in Virginia. I saw this more common in the South. I haven't seen it in Massachusetts, but it could be happening here too. In the South, I did notice there were people working at some of these mom and pop, like, food places, and they weren't making minimum wage. There were people who were being paid under the table. Is that what we call it? They were paid under the table. So there was no like employee paperwork. And they were just kind of, it's kind of come and go kind of thing. You come in for a couple of hours, I give you this amount of money, which it's not legal. You're not supposed to do that, but it does happen. And those people, a lot of times, will definitely feel like they can't advocate for themselves. And people may wonder, well, who would work that kind of job? Someone who has a criminal record, someone who may have, their immigration status may be kind of sketchy, or they're in a difficult situation with that. And so those people are also still exploited. So what do you think about like the mom and pop stores? Because that's another one where people have made this argument that you can't do $15 minimum wage because the mom and pop places can't afford to pay it. I'll just open that up to the panel.
Well, I don't see why. I mean, I don't know. Why can't the government subsidize then what the small store can't pay? I mean, if we can subsidize oil companies that in order for them to be profitable, why can't we subsidize our economy? I just don't understand that. I mean, that might be what has to happen. I definitely understand the experience of working in these smaller locations. Like in Hollywood, I worked for like a privately owned restaurant, and when we asked for security, he there was a lot of retaliation. He moved people from certain shifts for just asking that we have, or just asking that we make sure we leave together at night because there were stabbings and all these things happening. So it would have been nice to have, like, I know that there's like a restaurants association, but I feel like that's kind of, not really sure if that, how much that is for the workers and like workers' problems on the ground. But if there were a way, like in that Hollywood area, there's like an association for all of those people, because you're going to have a lot of the same problems, because you're in the same area. That would have been nice. So yeah, I mean, if we could organize outside of what Keisha was saying, like a regular definition of what a union is, and just make like some sort of official community outside of that, that'd be helpful.
Yeah, it's the kind of thing where, like, I mean, we talk about this every now and then. It's like no one's gonna do the work except for us. So, if we have an idea like this, it's like somebody just has to do it. I mean, somebody just has to, like, start making the flyers and, start planning meetings and just keep having them until people show up, or, it's really gonna take like some serious initiative from somebody. I don't know, somebody who's got the energy. I hope there's somebody out there.
Yeah, and I think in terms of what you said, Sabi, and people feeling like, oh, I feel bad for these mom and pop shops, and Courtney kind of saying like, why doesn't the government just subsidize it? I think too the idea that like, we should feel bad for like the management and stuff like that. Yeah, you might be close to your manager and you might feel like, oh, you're hurting them, or you're like hurting their feelings, or you're hurting their business. But the reality is, if they really cared about you as a person and as like a worker, they would do what they should to take care of you. And if you have to like go above their head and kind of, unionize or do a community kind of like, partnership, then it's kind of something you just have to do. And it's not really about their feelings at that point. It's just about your own, your own health and your own benefit and your own reflection of how much you value yourself as a worker and employee. And like, if you feel like you're getting paid correctly or you're getting the right benefits, it's something that we kind of just have to do. I know there's a lot of stores at Starbucks that like they felt bad. They didn't want to hurt their managers, feelings because they liked their manager. They actually didn't really have problems with their managers. And one of the things that I would say would be, managers would be a lot happier when their employees are happier, to be honest. Their employees aren't calling out or coming in late or, leaving early because they don't want to work, because they don't really care about the job. They wouldn't have such high turnover rates if they just had better conditions. So in terms of hurting their feelings, I mean, maybe a little bit, but I think in the long run, they would actually be pretty happy with having a solid staff.
That's right. And one thing to keep in mind is that turnover actually costs more money. Every time they have to bring in a new employee to train, that actually costs the company more money. So you would think they would care, more, so they didn't have to pay more money. What advice would you give to people who are watching this now and are thinking about trying to start a union?
We're like, okay, who wants to go first? Hold on to your britches, I guess. No, I would say, you have to really change your mindset. Like what Leah was just saying, like exactly hits it on the head. Like you will feel bad. You will feel like, oh no, like this manager is actually cool. Like, dang, like I don't want to hurt this person, or I do like the owner of this, place that I work, but my coworker over here is telling me things aren't good, so I got to go with them. Like you have to change your mindset to know that they know what they're doing is wrong. I know it might come across as if they're friendly to you and they're trying to like butter you up, but in reality, they know what they're doing is wrong, and you just have to get it in your mind, because we've been trained to just like work and not make any complaints and not say anything. You just have to. It's really hard to change your mindset, but once you change your mindset, then you can convince other people, and then you can start asking them those questions like, okay, well, if they do care about you, then why didn't they give you that raise? Or why didn't they offer you more money? Like, you don't think they have it? You have to start kind of getting people to think different.
I would say maybe like two things. What were they? Oh God. Okay, one of them is be able to adjust. I think that one thing that bothered me a little bit about the union's technique was that they had like very union-y, organize-y language, which I don't respond well to. So, like Chris Smalls, I'm more of a Chris Smalls approach. Like if you need to smoke weed with somebody and go talk to them and see what's going on, have a beer, do that. Be able to adjust. If some people like talking via text and don't like meeting in person, just do that, because you're gonna push people away. So I would say be able to adjust. And the other thing I would say is for anything, this also helped with our eviction. I would say document everything. The other side has lawyers. They have teams of lawyers. You do not have anything. So I would say when stuff starts happening, start writing it down. Keep a little journal. Say, okay, this thing happened, even if it didn't happen to you. It might be. It just will help in the end, because you've got to have proof of certain things that have been going on. And it's always just good to document those things, because the other side has, tenfold, 100-fold the kind of money, energy, and know-how with their lawyers teams. So especially Leah probably knows with something like Starbucks, like they're huge. So document everything.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Document. I did that personally. I know a lot of other coworkers, we were told by Workers United to do the same thing. I think the advice that I would have is to remember that the union isn't a third party. You guys, like anyone in your store, in your business, you guys are the union. So anything you want to demand, anything you need, like you vote on it, you get to go through with it, you get to come up with the ideas, you get to create that contract. Don't make the business or the union that's helping you organize a third party. And don't let management tell you that they're a third party. You are the voice, you are the power, and collective power, honestly, is big change. I do think it's, I'm not gonna lie, hard work, and it can be scary and it can have consequences. But I think at the light at the end of or the gold at the end of the rainbow kind of thing is, you will be respected and you will be treated better. And it's going to help not just you, but like future generations that work at that business or store or corporation, whatever, to also, have a good work environment. So